Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this event on advanced issues and online mediation. I hope that you're all having a wonderful day wherever you're tuning in from. I'm going to start just by explaining a little bit about MediateGuru in case you haven't joined us before. I know many of you might have. MediateGuru is a social initiative led by members across the globe. Our aim is to bridge the gap between the public and litigation by creating a social awareness campaign, raising awareness of mediation as the future. We've conducted several successful webinars in over 60 countries around the world, and our aim is to bring you the best lecture series with access to the best speakers around the world so that you can add value to your legal career and your studies. So I'm going to introduce our two wonderful speakers for today. First, we have Miss Anna Sambold, and Miss Anna is an internationally recognized attorney, mediator, arbitrator, and leader in the field of conflict resolution. She has served as a neutral in over 1,000 business-related cases. She is recognized as meeting the highest independent international standards for mediators established by the International Mediation Institute. And she is a member of the International ArbitralWomen, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and the International Council for Online Dispute Resolution. Currently, Anna serves as an executive officer on the American Bar Association section of dispute resolution. She's co-chair of the Advanced Mediation and Advocacy Skills Institute, executive officer of the California Lawyers Association litigation section, and chair of the San Diego County Bar Association's ADR section. She was also served as an adjunct professor of law for the California Western Law School, teaching extensively in conflict resolution and communication skills. And she works tirelessly to promote the use and benefits of alternative dispute resolution. We also have with us Miss Suzanne Guthrie, and Suzanne is nationally recognized as one of the top family law and mediation attorneys in the United States. She's been helping individuals and families to overcome separation and divorce for the last 30 years. Susan's also a well-regarded expert in online mediation and has been training colleagues on the ethics of conducting mediations online for the last 2 years. In 2018, she established Learn to Mediate Online, and she now offers more than 7 programs for professionals, all designed to help them take their career to new heights. Susan is also an award-winning podcast host, having reached a podcast listening audience of almost 4 million in the past 2 years. She is the creator of the award-winning podcast Divorce and Beyond. Susan is also honored to serve on the Executive Council of the American Bar Association section of dispute resolution as the membership officer and to be co-chair of the Mediation Committee and Advanced Mediation Skills Institute. Susan was also recently awarded the prestigious L. Randolph Lowry Awards from the Southern California Mediation Association, which is an award presented to an exceptional individual who has inspired us through their commitment to education in dispute resolution. So in a moment, I'm going to pass over to our two wonderful speakers for today. But first, I'd just like to remind you all that you can leave your comments and questions in the chat box below, and we will monitor them throughout the session. And at the end, we will have question and answer session. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Anna and Susan, and you will see me later.
Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you all here and be here again with everyone with MediateGuru and with my good friend, Anna Sambold. Hi, Anna. It's good to see you.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. Obviously, it's a pleasure to present again with my good friend and colleague, Susan. And just like you hear from us, we are both very passionate about mediation, and we have a lot of experience in online mediation. And the greatest thing is that we have totally different specialties. So you guys are going to get the benefit of that. She's a top law divorce and mediator and attorney. And and she's a specialist in online mediation, and she had that Learn to Mediate Online Academy that I really recommend if you want to get deeper into the issues in online mediation. And while I'm more of a commercial mediator and arbitrator, but we are both very involved with the American Bar Association. And by the way, she's the membership officer and now the budget officer, and I used to be the educational officer. But we always like to talk about all the benefits of joining the American Bar Association. That, by the way, is free for law students. I know so many students know that, but if you join the ABA, you're a law student, you don't have to pay anything. It's totally free. And you get tons of free membership benefits. Right, Susan?
Absolutely. And for only 25 US dollars per year, you actually get a premium membership, which comes with even more benefits. But Anna and I are both very active in the dispute resolution section. So just remember, you can join the American Bar Association as well as the dispute resolution section. And we put on a number of, Anna sets a high bar for the number of programs and quality of those programs that we put on. But we would love to see you there. If anyone would like to reach out to me and has any questions, it's susan@learntomediateonline.com. I'm happy to help you get signed up with the American Bar Association.
And now that you guys know about us, we would love to know more about you. So if you can go ahead and please respond to poll questions that we have for all of you. Phoebe or Param, could you run the first question?
So we're currently running the first question, which is the participant's primary connection with mediation.
Perfect.
And currently the vast majority are saying as a law student.
Let's see.
I love that.
I can see that. Okay, so we have 73% law students, 16% mediators, 2% lawyers, 1% professors, and 5% others. Okay, great.
That's wonderful. I love to see law students so interested in mediation, especially online mediation, because it's so near and dear to my heart. But that's a wonderful sign, I think, for the state of dispute resolution in the world right now. That's amazing.
I know. That's awesome. And let's see, the second question was, where are you from? I love how the numbers are going up. From Asia.
Yeah, it's nighttime for most people that are watching us then, is what I'm taking from this. You're all sitting there at the end of a long day. Anna is on the west coast of the United States. It's the crack of dawn for her. I'm a little further east, so it's a little later in the morning for me, but that's most of you are.
I was about to say good morning, but I realized, of course, in India is the evening, because here is 7:30 in the morning. And for you, Susan, is 10:30, right?
Yes. Yep.
In the
New
morning.
York time. Yeah. So, well, that's wonderful. And I'm excited. And first, I did want to also just say thank you to MediateGuru, because I am really impressed by, this is Anna's second, Anna, I think you were their very first international.
I was the first one.
Yeah, program. I was 6 or 7. Thrilled to be back, and absolutely thrilled to see how your outreach is really making an impact on really the world. I mean, the number of people that have reached out for these programs is truly to be commended and is amazing. So I'm thrilled to be back, and especially to be able to do it, as I said, with Anna, and talk to you all about these advanced issues in online mediation. So Anna, you spoke about mediation. I spoke about online mediation when we previously presented. And so our goal today is to really give people a little bit deeper dive into some of the higher level issues that they might run into as online mediators.
Yeah, I think you covered the basics in your webinar, right?
Yeah.
So now we can go dive deeper into the advanced issues in online mediation. And now that we have a pretty good idea about our audience, so let's start with a good overview of online mediation. So, well, since COVID-19 struck in March of 2020, this year, mediation, well, it is amazing how mediation, especially online mediation, took off. Because mediation, the regular in-person mediation, was already a viable option for resolving disputes. But once COVID-19 struck in March, a lot of courts around the world were closed. We have travel restrictions, we have strict lockdowns, and obviously that influence and people that was involved in a dispute, they were thinking, well, what I can do with my dispute, where I can take it, how I can get it resolved. And online mediation ended up being a really great option to try to work something out. It was safe and it was efficient. You didn't have to travel anywhere. You can meet online using an online platform, a video conference platform, and take care of your dispute with a neutral mediator. So I think in some way that's one of the few positive outcomes of the pandemic that basically forced us to innovate and to try new things and to use technology to resolve disputes. Because this is basically what it is. Online mediation is mediation, but using technology, using a video conference or using an online platform to deliver the mediation service. And in the beginning, I was amazed when I remember talking to Susan in the beginning of March about how people was still reluctant to try it. The advocates in my cases and parties, sometimes they were skeptical and they were afraid to try it, and they were kind of saying, "No, let's wait for this pandemic to be over." But by April, when the people realized that we didn't know how long it's gonna take, that's when the people start giving it a try. And I'm amazed now. Everybody is embracing it and loving it, and I think it's going to stay here even post-pandemic. So learning more about online mediation is a necessity nowadays, because the courts are still trying to catch up with all the backlog that they have in cases. Here, at least, for example, in California, cases have been vacated for the whole 2020. And they're just taking care of criminal cases now. And so pretty much mediation ended up being an incredible remote tool for resolving disputes. And I know that Susan did a survey among mediators and parties and advocates about the uses of online mediation. Susan, what did you find out about it?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. We've been doing this first phase of our survey for the past couple of months. We're just about to close it. And much to what Anna just said, Anna and I have been doing mediations online for a few years now, not just since COVID started. Anna is one of our leading international mediators and bilingual mediators. So the ease of mediating cross borders has been something that has drawn her to online mediation for years. And, I had my own reasons, having moved around the United States, to start mediating online. But we always found that when we would talk to our colleagues, at least, they were reluctant to try new technology, to try doing something in a different way. And so when they were forced online, they actually felt forced online, right? When COVID hit and people could no longer meet and do their mediations in person, they felt somewhat coerced into having to try this. And so there was a great reluctance that we were finding. So I was very interested when we put the poll out. One of the questions was, when you are able to go back to doing in-person mediations, will you continue to offer online mediation services or offer your services online. And 100% of the participants who answered that question said that they would either continue to offer both inline and online services, but a very significant number said they were just going to stay with online services and not go back to having an in-person office. So I think that shows from going from feeling like they had to go online, that this was something that was needed but not necessarily wanted. Now, when given the option, everyone plans to continue online, and many plan to continue only online. So I do think that that's very significant. And part of it is because mediators are enjoying the additional benefits of online mediation. But Anna, I think you can agree, it's also because the participants, the clients, are enjoying the benefits of online mediation.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the difference and to see people embracing it now. And I just love it because it's something that we were trying to get people to do for the longest time, right, Susan? It's like we have conversations with Susan all the time about, and I always told her, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Every single week I have to convince an advocate or a client to try online mediation because they're really skeptical about it. But now everybody loves it and everybody's embracing it, and it's going to stay here forever, even post-pandemic. So let's keep learning more about it. So definitely ODR works, right, Susan?
Yeah, absolutely. These are just a couple of quotes from people who have taken my online program. But as Anna said, back 2 years ago when I started the program, I maybe taught a couple of hundred people how to get online. But since COVID started, I think it's over 17,000 people have taken the program. And I have, these two are just two random comments of what I've gotten from people who took the program. But this is the type of reaction across the board that practitioners are having to mediating online. So just really something that I think, online mediation not only works, but it is definitely here to stay.
So now that we know kind of the basics of online mediation, what I would like to start is with what is the beyond the basics. And I think so the first advanced issue in online mediation is if you want to provide an online mediation service, or if you're going to participate in an online mediation, the first thing to consider is the ethical obligation that you have to be competent to learn about the process, to understand how the video platform works and how the process works. Because it's for mediators and for advocates, there's ethical duty to learn, to be diligent and learn about the process. So that's why I'm really, really excited to see that so many law students are interested in learning about this process, because in that way you're fulfilling your obligation of being competent and you're getting ready for the future of dispute resolution. And we use in different platforms. A lot of people use Zoom. But Susan, what else is out there besides Zoom to conduct an online mediation?
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm asked probably most often about online mediation. What other platforms do you use? What other platforms are available? Because in that same survey that we referenced earlier, one of the questions we also asked is, what platform are you using? And I think it was 97% of participants said they were using Zoom. But when I talked to participants who weren't using Zoom, and I hear from a number of practitioners, especially if you're dealing with insurance companies, if you're dealing with some of the larger law firms and some larger companies as clients, many of them are uneasy or not willing to allow their employees to use Zoom. So you are in a position as a practitioner, as the mediator, where you need to be able to provide an alternate platform platform. And I would argue that just as a professional, we should be proficient in more than one online platform. So the three we have listed here, I just want to bring to your attention because they are all platforms that were created for attorneys and online dispute resolution. So they, from the ground up, were built to service our industry. And that means things like confidentiality and privacy have been in integral part of the creation of these platforms. They all happen to be out of Australia. And I think that I know we have some Aussies with us on the platform. I commend you all. Your country is way ahead of most of the world in online dispute resolution, in dispute resolution in general. It is the go-to way of resolving disputes and conflicts in Australia. But Legaler, Modron, and Resolve Disputes Online, RDO, are all three wonderful platforms that have been in existence between 7 and 10 years. So these are not new to the market, not created just because of COVID. And they have an ease of use and an ability to function for what we need as Mediator, the functionality that we need that was built in, whereas Zoom, we're learning to adapt a meeting platform for our dispute resolution process. So I do recommend that you go and check these out. Legaler right now is running a 1-year free membership. I believe that it is remote with a small r, remote-19 is the code, and you can get a free year. But all three of them are fantastic and have very competitive pricing.
And I believe that I guess depending on the country where you are, some mediators have preferences for specific like online video conference platforms, right, Susan? Because I hear from friends in England that they love WebEx. Another ones that use.
I don't get it.
And the East Coast, they're using Blue Jeans. And other ones are using Microsoft Teams. It's just amazing how many video conference and online platforms we have available for mediators to conduct an online mediation. So, but the point is that whatever platform you choose, be sure that you understand how that works. Because just like I mentioned, the first ethical consideration to keep in mind is you had to be competent and you had to understand how that works. And so let's go to our next aspect, and that is client preparation, because one thing that is very, very crucial in an online mediation is all the preparation before the mediation session. And then especially when you have clients that are represented by an advocate, you have to basically, as a mediator, you have to prep the advocate, and the advocate had to prepare the client. So you had to be really, really good at preparing everyone and make them feel familiar with the process. Because what I feel is like people is skeptical and is reluctant and is afraid to try it because of the technology involved with the process. So if you make them feel comfortable with the whole process and you explain and you educate them about it, they will feel better and they will feel at ease when mediation comes. And so I guess the first recommendation here in this in regard to this aspect is to create a document that educates the advocate and the client about the whole process. Just lay out what's going to happen, what do you want them to be prepared, what do you want them to know, specifying it, even providing some hyperlinks to video tutorials. That's what I used to do in the beginning when in March or April, because a lot of people they didn't know what to expect with Zoom, for example, that I was using it. And so I provided a lot of tutorials that explain how to do a breakout session, how to screen share, how and just to feel comfortable with the whole process. At the same time, to prepare my clients, I always offer a pre-mediation video conference just to practice and to give them the feeling of what they're going to experience when we have the mediation. And I found that really helpful and make feel people at ease when they have the chance to try it. And during the pre-mediation video conference, they have the chance to ask me questions and to say, oh, so this is how it's going to work. And like, yeah, this is, we can try different things and I can show them and walk them through the whole process. So I definitely recommend to offer that. And because remember, the whole point is to make them feel familiar with the process and with the technology involved with the online mediation. Susan, do you have anything else to add?
Well, just, for those of you who are in law school or are advocates at this moment and might be going into a mediation as a representative of a client in the mediation, always remember that as the advocate, it is your responsibility to make sure that your client is ready to go online. That might mean you need to either yourself or have a staff member onboard that client and how to use the technology, walk them through it. But also remember, if you're bringing witnesses, if you are bringing in experts, if you have other participants, they also need to be onboarded so that they feel that they are comfortable with the platform. I can't, agree more with what Anna said. Doing all of that before you have the very first formal mediation session is really critical because it allows you to get everything out of the way, getting people comfortable. They get to meet you. They get to feel a little more comfortable in the setting. And you as the mediator can be doing things like checking their internet connection to make sure they have a good internet connection, making sure that their camera and their lighting are working well and that you can see their face, that their audio is working well. You can be checking all that. They don't even know you're doing it. But that's why that pre-mediation meeting can be just so critical. And then some of the other issues, Anna, that I know we run into and are asked about probably most often. I actually saw a couple of questions in the chat right now. Those issues of privacy and confidentiality, because this is probably what I think most people see as the greatest vulnerability of being online, right? You are online. And therefore, I always say the biggest difference with an online mediation and an in-person mediation is that the participant environment is out of the control of the mediator. So when they're in our conference room, we think, at least, we have the illusion that we are in control of that environment, that we are, we know who else is in the room, we know whether they're filming it and all of that information. But when they're remote from us, we've lost some of that control, and that's where people start to get worried. I will say, and I've said this in every single online mediation webinar that I have ever done, is that it's pretty much an illusion that we're in control in person as well as online. If people are intent on circumventing privacy and confidentiality, they're going to figure out a way that they can do it. And the number one way they do it is with this little guy, the cell phone, the mobile phone. This can be recording, this can be taking audio, they can call someone and they can be listening in on a telephone line that's still open. So unless you're banning cell phones from the room in an in-person, you still have issues. But as Anna and I both believe strongly, and I know she does this with all of her clients as well, as we as the mediators are in charge. It is our process, we are running the process for our clients. That's one of the things that they are hiring us for. So where we know there are vulnerabilities, it is our responsibility to develop protocols around those, make some rules, and then educate our clients and let them know what those rules are and why it's so important that they follow them, why making sure that it is a private and confidential proceeding is to their benefit. I find it's not just a matter of telling them what the rules are, tell them why the rules are there, because people are much more likely to follow them when they understand it's because there's a benefit to them. And so that's one of those issues that I think is really important. Now, Anna, have you run into issues with cybersecurity?
Well, not so much into cybersecurity, but I want to add something about privacy and confidentiality, because I never start a mediation until I get the confidentiality agreement and the ground rules, the document that I send before the mediation, signed by all the participants. And I'm very strict about it, because one of the I guess the main value of mediation is that is a confidential process. So I want to make a point, and I want to be sure that all the participants understand the importance of keeping the process confidential and private. So in the document that I send before the mediation, I explain the ground rules, and I explain that nobody that is no authorized to be participating in the mediation can be participating without letting me know, let everyone know. And at the same time, I want them to know that nobody's allowed to record, that nobody's allowed to be in the same room, that they haven't signed the confidentiality agreement. And in many cases, I have, and it's pretty funny, I'm in the middle of a mediation, and I start hearing somebody whispering. And I realized that somebody's talking to the person in an online mediation. And right away, I stop the whole mediation and I say, are you with somebody else in the room? And people sometimes they get, no one is here. But I always remind them, like, look, it's okay. You want to have somebody else with you. And sometimes they have their wife, or they have their son, or somebody's just curious to know more about the mediation, the online mediation process. So I said, look, is this fine if you want to have somebody else? But just let me know. And I send them the confidentiality agreement and have them sign, because I want them to know that the process is confidential, and I want them to agree to the rules of to keeping the process confidential. So in referring us to the cybersecurity, well, this is something that is becoming more and more important nowadays. And I mediate and arbitrate for the American Arbitration Association and ICDR. And the big issue this year was cybersecurity. So when we were going through the refresher class this year, it was all about cybersecurity. And that made me realize how important it is for advocates, for mediators, for arbitrators to keep good cybersecurity measures and have a good cybersecurity hygiene. That's how they call it. And what I mean by that is all of us, especially when we're handling cases and important information, we are accumulating tons of sensitive information in our computers and on our devices. And that is super important to keep it safe, because if something happened, if you get hacked or you get a virus and your whole system is destroyed, all that sensitive information, it can be taken away from, and that is a catastrophic thing that can happen. So you have to keep, you have to identify what sensitive information you have from your cases in your computer, delete information that you don't need after the case is done. Be sure that you upload it to a cloud service or Dropbox or some type of online platform where it can be kept safe, and just don't click in attachments that you don't know. Obviously, that's the easiest way to get into your computer. And so just keep good cybersecurity hygiene. And that's why I want to mention it now, because nowadays everything pretty much is going online. And so options are that something can happen with your computer, with your computer system, or with your emails, and with all the sensitive information that you have in a storage.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, and emails as well. Don't send sensitive information via an email, attached to an email. I still get people sending me their tax returns attached to an email address, their emails. And I was like, no.
I know. And that's why I'm a big fan of Dropbox. I use it a lot. And now I ask all my clients to send me and upload and everything up there, because in that way you keep everything safe. Yeah. And about Zoom bombing. Zoom bombing, it refers to, I don't know if you all remember, but in the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody started using Zoom, there were a lot of news about people, strangers, intruding into Zoom meetings and posting pornography and inappropriate pictures in Zoom meetings. So people was talking about, oh, well, Zoom is not really secure and everything. But I read a lot about it. And the whole point was that people weren't keeping the link to the Zoom meeting private, or they were sharing with everyone. And that's how people, strangers, were getting access to the link to get into Zoom meetings. So that's what I will always recommend, to create a link, asking your clients and your advocates to keep it safe. Don't share it publicly, just share it with your client, and always admit people, enable some way a procedure to admit people into the online mediation, and keep people waiting, maybe in the waiting room, until you identify this person and you can admit it. And that way no strangers can get into your online mediation. Right, Susan?
Absolutely. And Zoom has actually, since Zoom is the most used platform, Zoom has done a great job in also enhancing their security. They've made the sign-on links and meeting IDs longer. They've made the waiting room a default. And very soon they're actually going to have video in the waiting room, so that the host will be able to see visually the people in the waiting room. So you'll be able to identify them, not just by their name that's listed in the waiting room. You'll actually be able to see them. But really the biggest problem with Zoom bombing was that people weren't protecting their sign-on information. Mm-hmm. So I see this one, Anna, is a big one, because I see a lot of people asking about this.
Tons of people.
This is always the question.
This is the number one issue that, I guess, right, in online mediation. Yeah. For some reason, everybody thinks that an online mediation, creating rapport and managing emotions, is more difficult than an in-person mediation. But I and Susan, with Susan, we talk about this all the time. We don't believe that. We believe that is the opposite. In an online mediation, you can see the people's faces right there, okay? So you can tell right away. You can read people's emotions even better than an in-person mediation. And that's what this is one of the things that I love online mediation, because I think so I get even more from people in an online mediation. And now I remember when I used to do in-person mediations, sometimes I missed people's expressions, because I do a lot of multi-party commercial mediations. So I have like maybe 6-7 people in one conference room, and then I have to go to another conference room and deal with another 6 people. So it was really hard to keep track of everybody's facial expressions. And obviously I missed a lot, because I was normally talking to just the advocate. But now I feel like even the client, because we have him right there. So there's no way to ignore that. There's no way to dismiss somebody that is right there and is making facial expressions. So I think it's so much easier to read emotions, and so much easier to connect with people and get them engaged in the process. Now I feel like clients, I have the chance to talk to the clients directly. I get to know more the clients, because I can see their background, and I can see, maybe we can do a small chat about, oh, wow, I love the painting that you have in the background. Or I see them sometimes petting a dog or petting a cat, and we start talking about their pet. And And another thing is, I feel like people sometimes forget that online mediation, you need to use exactly the same skills that you normally use for an in-person mediation to create rapport and just manage emotions. Just the same skills, but through their own video conference. So the same skills that you normally use to communicate and manage emotions, like asking open-ended questions, rephrasing, summarizing, those are the ones that you have to use to in the online setting, and active listening. And one of the things that I always remember from my classes, I always told my students too, and I remember, Susan, you know this too, that our communication is 55% comes from our facial expressions, 25% comes from the tone of our voice, and only 20% comes from the words that we're saying. So that is amazing to me. So, and one thing that I really, really appreciated more about online mediation is recently I did an in-person mediation. It was a really delicate and really tragic case about the death of a small child. And they wanted me to do it in person. And I figured, okay, I'm going to do it in person. And I realized that one of the things was that everybody had to wear a mask and everybody had to be 6 feet apart. So because everybody was wearing a mask, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell the people's expressions, and I couldn't tell if the people was upset or they were happy. And it was hard to read for me what they were feeling. And I really, at that point, I realized, wow. And online mediation is so much better because I can see people without wearing a mask. Yeah. And that in an in-person mediation where everybody's wearing a mask. So I can have them right there physically present, but I can't tell if they're upset or they're happy because they're wearing a mask. And we're wearing a mask because you don't get anything. So that's why I believe that online mediation is even so much better for establishing rapport and managing emotions. Right, Susan?
Yeah, I mean, I've never noticed a deficiency in being able to read emotions, read body language. I would say when you're talking about creating rapport, and you and I have talked about this, Anna, two things that I think are really important, and this kind of refers back to what we were talking about with the pre-mediation meeting, is if you have the opportunity as the mediator to do a separate meeting, pre-mediation with each side, that also allows you to start creating that rapport because you're getting that one-on-one time with the client or clients, with the advocate or advocates, and it gives them that ability to speak to you directly, let you know their concerns, what their interests are. So that's one great tip. Another one is that I spoke with another colleague of Anna's and mine at the Southern California Mediation Association, Dr. Deborah Dupree, who's a psychologist. And we were talking about managing those emotions online because sometimes, we're dealing with people in conflict. They get upset, emotions run high. And we might reach out and pat someone's hand or touch their shoulder to show our empathy or show that we understand their emotional content. And Dr. Deborah said, well, you just because you can't do that through a screen, you can verbally describe what you would do or say, Bob, I can see that this is a very emotionally sensitive topic for you, or I can see this creates, a great deal of sadness for you. Or if we were together, I would reach out and touch your hand to let you know that I really do understand and can see that this is really emotional for you. So you can use your words to create that emotional connection. You can lean into the screen, all of what Anna said. I mean, I really think that the fact that this is such a visual and audio experience, when so much of our communication is visual and audio, it makes it it's actually better than in person for creating that personal touch virtually. Now, another question, I don't know how, this was a question that was coming along quite a bit in the early days of mediation. I think most mediators have found ways to do an end run because really, one of the things that we're hopeful that is going to happen as a result of our mediation is we're going to come to an agreement, or we're going to be able to come to terms. And so often at the end of the mediation, before everyone leaves, there's a desire to get that document drafted and get it signed by everyone. So there's, how are we going to create the document? And again, this is an area where I think online mediation is far superior to in-person mediation, because you can throw a Word document up on the screen share. You can create a Google Doc and share it amongst everyone. One of the advocates, this is what happens in most of my mediations, one of the advocates will already have a template or something to work from, and we can put that on a screen, and we can all be looking at exactly the same document as the changes are being made in real time to create that document. And so I actually find it goes much faster, and it's easier for the advocates to then review that document with their clients in the same way. They can pull it up in a breakout room and go over that document in screen share with their client, and then come back with any needed changes, but it goes much more quickly. And then when it needs to be signed, I mean, by far, Anna, maybe you do something different, but by far I use an e-signature platform. I happen to use DocuSign for all
I'm
of my
the biggest fan of DocuSign.
I love it, right?
And I swear to God that this is just the greatest thing ever. I had a 14-hour online mediation a couple weeks ago. I broke my record. I had people from all over California and Mexico. I do a lot of mediations involving people from different nationalities, and I'm multilingual. And I have around 12 people involved in that mediation. And we start at 9 a.m. And by 11 p.m., finally, after like 14 hours, we reach an agreement. And I was just afraid that if I let the people go without signing the agreement, I don't know if the people would regret it the following day, because I have seen that happen. So I wanted to be sure that everybody signed that agreement before ending the mediation. So what I did, and thank God at that point, I knew about DocuSign. I was trying it. I just uploaded the agreement into DocuSign. And DocuSign, you just have to type the email address of every participant and send it to this person, to every participant. They sign it, and you get back the agreement signed. So by midnight, everybody signed that settlement agreement, and we were done. And I was happy because I'm like, okay, nobody can regret it. No, everybody already signed it. So this is just the greatest thing. And I really recommend it, DocuSign.
Yeah, although I do want to just point out quickly, some of those platforms that I was talking about earlier, I think Modrin and Legaler both have e-signatures as a part of the platform. So another reason to maybe check those out. Oh, Zoom fatigue.
I know, and that is something that is happening now with so much Zoom meetings and being online. So, Susan, this is a topic that has been seen now in the news. So, what is exactly Zoom fatigue?
Well, Zoom fatigue it actually is a real psychological phenomena. It's our brain chemistry responds to being constantly online in a fashion that actually brings about real fatigue. And I can attest to it. I will raise my hand. Since COVID started and we started doing back-to-back online meetings, I will sit in this chair at this computer 8, 9, 10 hours a day, not moving, not doing anything other than actively engaging with the screen. And I am literally exhausted at the end of the day. And it is a function of our brain. The more meetings that you participate in, and the fact that all of our participants are often with different backgrounds and a lot going on. And because we are so engaged in seeing everyone's expression, hearing the inflection in everyone's tones, we're actually getting a great deal more data for our brain to process than we do normally in an in-person meeting. So it actually is fatiguing. So, there's a number of studies, but on the screen here, we have some of the top tips that we will put in there. And I do think, avoid multitasking. We are those people who will be like answering emails on our phone, doing this, trying to answer the questions. If you can be focused on the one task, that will be easier for you. The number one tip for me, build in breaks. For some reason, we tend to schedule ourselves like for an hour of a meeting, and then we start the next meeting right after that, and we start the next meeting right after that. If you can do them on the quarter hour or give yourself 15-minute breaks, go take a quick walk, you're going to feel a lot better. Having the neutral background. I saw a question in the chat about having people in a mediation using a virtual background. I use one as the mediator in my trainings as well as when I'm the mediator, because again, I keep it very plain, very neutral, so that there's less stimulation for the people who are in the room. I agree with Anna that it's nice, and in my pre-mediation, I will sometimes have my real background there, because you can create some rapport by talking about people's environments. But during the actual process, when there's a lot going on, the more neutral everyone's background, the better. Some mediators I know send out a neutral background to all of the participants, so everyone has the same screen background, so that it's very, very neutral. And the other thing, and maybe you found this too as well, Anna, for some reason, we have given up on emails and phone calls, and we do everything these days as a Zoom call or as a video call. And often a phone call or an email would have sufficed.
Yeah, totally. And well, we have to be aware and conscious about how much time we're spending online. And that way you don't get, because at least when I'm mediating the whole day, at the end of the day, I'm like mentally drained. And I realized it was because of the intensity of the whole, already dealing with the conflict and disputes and party dispute is very stressful and very demanding. And so plus having the online setting for so long, obviously. So you have to give yourself a break. I always recommend, I always have in my desk, you should see this right now. I have snacks, I have water, I have my coffee, I have everything around me ready to go just in case that I start getting hungry and cranky. And another thing, in the beginning, I used to be a really big fan of virtual backgrounds, but when I read something about how much it demands from people's mind when you have different backgrounds, virtual backgrounds, I start being a big fan of plain backgrounds. So right now I have this just plain wall, but if you're gonna use a virtual background, if you have a big mess at home and you can hide it, okay, fine, get a virtual background. But if you get a virtual background, be sure that you get a green screen like this. You see that? Because otherwise you get a virtual background and without the green screen, and you're going to start disappearing when you move around. And that, I think that is really annoying and really distracting. So that will be my recommendation in that regard. So Susan, let's talk about unconscious bias. What is exactly that?
This is an area that was brought to my attention at one of the American Bar Association dispute resolution section programs that you organized when you were our programs chair. And I thought it was such a brilliant insight, because we all have, the issue of unconscious bias is vast. But when you are online, there are certain circumstances that can lead to unconscious bias that we are unconscious of. And it's one of the reasons I like to talk about this is because I want people to be more aware of this. So imagine or think about those instances where you are in an online meeting with someone whose Wi-Fi is not working well. So they're getting that strange audio, or their screen keeps freezing. How do you feel about that person? most of the time you're going to feel irritated with that person. Why didn't they make sure they had a good Wi-Fi connection? Why didn't they do a better job? Or when you have a person who doesn't know how to use the platform, or who sets up their screen so that you're looking up their nose the entire time like this, or any of those issues that show that someone is not proficient online or is having issues online, that can actually lead to unconscious bias issues. And not in a way that I think anyone ever thinks of those things arising. But that's one of the reasons why participants need to be onboarded and understand and have good skills with their online platform. Because you, especially if you're their advocate, you don't want your client going online and freezing and irritating the other participants or the mediator or the arbitrator or whoever you are dealing with, and creating these issues of unconscious bias. And we as mediators need to realize some people have issues that the Wi-Fi just may not be good. I've had every issue you can have with Wi-Fi and internet connection since COVID started. But it's one of those things that we need to be aware of and we need to take measures against.
I know, especially as a mediator, that we pledge to be neutral and impartial, and it's pretty hard to be neutral and impartial when one of the parties is having technical difficulties, and it starts getting very frustrated because it's like basically ruining the whole mediation process. And that's why it's super important to prepare the client and the advocate before the mediation session, and remember to educate the client as much as possible and the advocate, and explain everything possible, everything in the process. Be sure that you are not in a public place. Be sure that you have a secure Wi-Fi and a strong Wi-Fi. Be sure that your technical equipment works. Be sure that your video works, your audio works, because there's nothing more frustrating that when you can see the person but you can hear them, or when you can hear them but you can see them, or when they're sitting behind a window. That's another thing that I always see. Sometimes people don't realize when you're sitting behind a window, you're in the shadow and you can see them. And it's so hard for an advocate that is arguing about an argument case for the client, and you can see them because they're in the shade. And so it's super important that those little things influence in your perception of the advocate, of the client. So you want your client or your case to just be sure that everything works, and be sure that in the way that you look professional. That is going to influence it definitely in the outcome of the mediation. And another point that we want to talk about is power imbalance. And I see this all the time in my employment mediations. I do a lot of employment cases, and sometimes what happens is I have a self-represented employee that is suing a company. So sometimes the company has the president, the CEO, the human resources person. Sometimes they have the in-house counsel and the president of the board of directors, and I have the self-represented party in the other side. So when we have a joint session, that is not pretty common in my mediations, but in employment cases, I start with a joint session. So the power imbalance is more evident because I see 6 people from one side, and I see the self-represented employee in the other. And that is obviously visibly is not really I will say balance. So what I recommend, that's what I start doing right now, is if I'm gonna have and I mediate for different federal agencies like the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and they are already figuring out that they have to limit the number of participants representing one side, and that way the employee or the plaintiff doesn't feel overwhelmed and intimidated by the 7 people, the 8 people showing up with the other side. So now the policies, they're evolving and changing. And now, for example, we are requiring that if we're going to have one self-represented party, the other side can bring only one, his lawyer, and that's it. They can bring 10 people. And that helps to keep the balance in the mediation. And the last issue that I want to talk about is multilingual parties, because this is something that I think is another benefit of doing it online. When you're dealing with people that speak different languages, like I do it all the time. People that speak Spanish, people who speak Italian, speak different languages, and it's just so much easier to deal with everyone online. Because what I do sometimes is I conduct mostly of my mediations between different breakout rooms. So I admit everyone into the waiting room and I assign them to different breakout rooms. So I can talk to one in Spanish and then I can talk to the other one in English, and it makes it so much easier, the whole process. And well, if I'm doing it in person, I'm probably gonna have to have a translator or somebody to translate to the other side. So that always helps us. And like we keep saying, online mediation is so much easier and so much effective and convenient for everyone. So we just love that part. Susan, is anything else that we should add?
No, the only thing on multilingual parties is Zoom does have the ability to have a transcription in different languages. You do have to upgrade your account to one of the higher level accounts. But if you are someone like Anna, who does a number of international and multilingual mediations, sometimes people find that very helpful. And then, yes, don't miss. So Anna has a wonderful article that you can get on her website, the do's and don'ts of online mediation. There are a lot of both, right? A lot of do's and a lot of don'ts.
And Susan has really good resources all over her website, and she had an amazing podcast. She's the queen of podcasts, and so please listen to that one. And I think so. We are probably run out of time, right? So let's take some questions now.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna and Susan. That was a really insightful and informative presentation. Lots of good advice for our viewers. We do have some good questions, actually. So the first one is from Elliot Herland, and he says, should you assist or correct a person's mistakes? And if so, how?
Hi, Elliot. Elliot's one of my colleagues and friends from the American Bar Association section of dispute resolution. He's on the membership committee with me. So, Elliot, if you're talking about the mistakes that they make with their online platform, so if they're making mistakes in like their camera is down here looking up their nose or something like that, I will gently discuss that with them. That's one of the benefits, actually, of doing that pre-mediation meeting with people, because most people set up their computer to do video conferences the same way every time. So if they sign on for the online mediation pre-mediation meeting, it's going to be set up usually the same way. Or I just commend them in their pre-mediation meeting on how well they're set up. I can see that you obviously are a pro at virtual meetings. Your camera's in a great position and I can see you well and very clearly. That positive reinforcement usually means that when they come back for the mediation session, they're already set up. But I will sometimes say, it's hard for me to see your face, and 55% of our communication is our facial expression. So if you were able to move your camera to maybe a little bit higher or a little bit closer to the middle, that would be helpful. Anna, do you help people when they're having issues?
And you know what? My dog was barking out of control, so I was muting myself, so I missed the question.
Oh, so the question, it was when people are making mistakes, and I'm guessing, what do you do when someone is being inappropriate? God, we get people being inappropriate in mediations all the time. What do you do when someone's inappropriate, Anna?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I always say there's a mute button for a reason, as Anna's just exploring right now. I have muted people. And you're muted right now, or your audio is not working.
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. So that is one of the things that when I find that somebody, well, in some ways misbehaving, I just try to, I just move them to a different breakout room and I talk to them in private. I love breakout rooms and I love to move people around. And I say, hey, what about if I move you to a different virtual room and we talk about what's happening, and I find out what is going on. But I do it in a private and confidential way, and that way people doesn't feel humiliated being called in front of everyone. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I did notice earlier someone had a question about how they can learn how to use breakout rooms. I did want to say I have a video tutorial on my website for free. So if you go to the learntomediateonline.com website, go to free videos, and I think four or five down is a tutorial on using the waiting room and using breakout rooms. So that can be helpful because, as Anna said, super helpful to be able to break people out into those rooms.
It's one of the greatest things ever to know how to create those virtual breakout rooms and to manage people in a mediation. That is just the best thing. Yeah. And Susan does a really good job explaining that in that video tutorial.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I'm sure that many of our viewers will check that out. Thank you for sharing that. We do have some more questions. We just have time to take a few. So another question that we had is on the imbalance of power issue. How do you diplomatically tell the lawyers to stand down sometimes or to pull back a bit?
And that's something that I do from the beginning. And remember in that document that I sent before the mediation, and when we are setting up everything, the date, and I always ask who is going to be participating from your side, and I remind them about the policies that I have in regard to, look, we have a self-represented party in the other side, so please don't bring more than one or two people from your side, because otherwise it's going to be a huge power imbalance, and that is going to influence in the outcome of the mediation. That's what I would do. Before that, I don't want the people just showing up and at the mediation having 10 people from their side.
Okay, another question that we have is, so you've given this wonderful talk on online mediation and it's all been very positive. Would you say that there are any limitations to online mediation at all?
Definitely. There as with anything, online mediation doesn't work if someone doesn't have an internet connection. That can be a real issue. We just bought a home that's, a little further out into the country, and several of the homes that we looked at weren't on the internet grid. They did not get high-speed internet. We couldn't buy those houses. So that is an issue for people. Connectivity is an issue, and the equipment that people need, especially in low income, it's an access to justice issue for a lot of people. I do find that almost everyone has a phone. You can mediate from your phone. You can be a participant even in a Zoom mediation with breakout rooms from your phone, but it's not ideal. When somebody's participating from a phone, the thumbnails for the videos are obviously very small. And as we talked about several times, being able to see people's face, hear them well is an integral part of communicating through that virtual medium. So that can definitely be an issue. Some of the other issues are the technical problems. Some people, and I'm going to throw mediators under the bus, much to what Anna said earlier, is we do have a duty to be proficient in what we're doing and competent in what we're doing. Unfortunately, many mediators are just jumping online and winging it. That'll be the phrase I'm going to use for it, where they're not making sure that they're proficient in the skills that they need. It's not just a matter of being able to have an online meeting. You need to be able to do so much more than that, and a good mediator will be proficient in more than just how to set up a meeting and how to speak to people that way.
I would just add that I guess one of the biggest issues probably in an online setting is that you don't have control over the party's environment or the setting. So if somebody is in a very crowded place, or somebody is at home and has the dogs barking and the baby's crying, and that is always going to be very distracting to everyone in the mediation. But I guess everything can be controlled and just can be fixed. So that's the good thing. And if somebody shows up that it wasn't invited or they wasn't agreed to participate in the mediation, well, you just, like I said, just stop the mediation, ask them, excuse me, I didn't know that you were participating in this mediation. How you sign the mediation agreement? How you sign my documents? Go back. I'm going to send you the document right now. Read it, review it, agree to it, and sign it. And there we go. I welcome you into the mediation. So those will be the issues that I see in the mediation.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. I think we just have time for one more question. So do clients become more impatient or more easily triggered, are the words used, for online mediation, or is it the other way around? Do they become more kind of impassioned in face-to-face mediations?
That's a great question. And actually, so Dr. Deborah Dupree, who I mentioned earlier, the psychologist, I've spoken to her on this. And this is actually one of the major benefits of online mediation. It's actually a biological, physiological fact that our brains do not release stress hormones at the same levels when we are faced with conflict, but we're looking at each other on a screen. Our brain will release much more cortisol and other stress hormones when you are in the same room, or even in like the same suite of offices or conference rooms when there's conflict going on. So people are actually much more emotionally tolerant of high emotion. And I'm a divorce attorney, so all I deal with is high emotion, but they are much more capable of regulating their emotional content in the online platform, which means that we're actually able to move through the process more quickly, and they're more able to maintain a rational mindset. Have you found that, Anna, I know you do some very emotional cases as well.
Well, I'm just thinking about sexual harassment cases. I do a lot of those. And in sexual harassment cases, obviously, the person that is being harassed is always intimidated by the fact of getting together with the accuser. And obviously, in an online setting, I always find it as so much easier for them to face the accuser and to face the person that was harassing them than in an in-person mediation. Or in cases of, for example, I remember now many cases where I feel like an in-person mediation, the lawyers, the advocates, they don't behave that bad. In an online setting, people is probably nicer because they can insult you directly in your face in an online setting. I have many lawyers that lose control in my in-person mediations, and they ended up yelling at me and that haven't happened in an online setting because people is more subtle and they know it is harder and it is more difficult. So that's one of the benefits of mediation, online mediation. The people behave a little better and is not that intimidated by getting together, of seeing somebody on the screen like they will be in person.
Thank you. That's interesting to know. I think that's about all we have time for. So once again, I'd just like to thank you both for coming and giving up your time here today. It's been a really insightful, informative session. I think it will help a lot of our viewers who are just starting to think about mediation and embarking on their career journey. So I'd just like to say to everyone watching, please fill out the feedback form so that you can receive your e-certificate of participation. And please, if you'd like to join our our update groups, then feel free to contact us after the session. I'd like to let everyone have a lovely day now, and I think we'll end things here. So once again, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Phoebe. Thank you, MediateGuru. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully that was helpful. Feel free to reach out to us and always on LinkedIn. I guess Susan is on LinkedIn, on her website, everywhere. You can reach out to us, and if you have any more questions, feel free to let us know.
Absolutely. We're always here. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very generous. Okay.